Hi there, and welcome to Talks at Rhineland. This is Patrick Verdonck. Today I'm being joined by Jacob Susman, a successful entrepreneur investor in the renewable energy space and in energy transition. Welcome, Jake.
Great to be here, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
So Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, what you've done in the last couple of years. I know you've done a lot of interesting things in renewables and in energy transition, and tell us a little bit about your accomplishments.
Well, you're very kind to give the successful entrepreneur intro, but that is a lot of what my career has been about. So I got started in the power sector in 1999 with the AES Corporation over in Spain, and we were building a big old gas plant, but we were seeing a ton of renewables opportunity before it was really a big deal in the U.S. So I kind of fell into renewables at the time and never really left. Worked on a business plan for OwnEnergy when I was at business school, but ended up going to Goldman Sachs for a few years and spent most of that time in the alternative energy investing group. So we worked with a lot of great growth companies like Horizon Wind Energy, SunEdison for solar at the time to help really kind of expand those businesses and had some good successes. But I just had that entrepreneurial itch. And when we decided to exit our Horizon investment, I decided to go start my own venture. And that's a company called OwnEnergy that was a specialist in mid-sized wind farms with a model where we focused on partnering with people in the local community. So you save some development costs, you cut down on development risk and timelines, but meanwhile, you also make connections in that local community that can lead to better offtake agreements. So that resulted in about now 13 projects that are operating. More than $1.5 billion worth of infrastructure spinning and 1 gigawatt worth of wind. So feel pretty good about everything that happened in that time. I think one of the things that's kind of unique about that company, maybe two of that time, we were the only venture capital backed wind development company, which I think made us a little bit of a poster child for cleantech VC within the wind community, if you will.
Sure.
And then we were also really early to the trend for corporate offtake of renewables. So I think we were runner-up on a Google contract in 2011, and this didn't really become a big deal until 2015. So those were a couple of the kind of special and unique things about the company, and I think that's probably what attracted EDF to come acquire us in 2015. So I stayed on as the head of origination for a few years, taking care of EDF's corporate and utility clients across wind, solar, and storage in the U.S. Great experience. Really enjoyed working with the team there. Very impressive company and group of people. But really wanted to get back to something more in the entrepreneurial realm. So the last couple of years, what I've been working on is a growth capital investment firm that was focused still on this corporate sustainability theme. Tough raising funds here in the midst of a pandemic, and got off to I think a really good start, but ended up having more of a slog during the fundraising process amidst COVID. And so my partners have decided to go off and prosecute that strategy inside a big bank, and I hear they're doing great. And I'm now kind of gearing up for my next thing.
That's amazing. Well, it's really great to hear more about your background. So one of the things I wanted to touch on was your experience in the wind side, and certainly on the origination business that you then led with EDF. So if you look back, over the years, cost of generation of both wind and solar have come down dramatically. The LCOEs have declined pretty rapidly over the years. And what we've seen is that benefit has really flown through to the end users, through the ratepayers, through the buyers of the power under PPAs. Only recently have we seen that trend reverse, where we're actually seeing prices of PPAs go up, especially with wind, but also more recently with solar. And so we're basically seeing less of a pass-through of the cost declines flowing through to the end users. Do you think that's a longer-term secular shift where there's going to be more pricing power back to the developers, or do you think that's more of a temporary issue as we try and sort out supply and demand in renewable power?
Definitely temporary, and I've been away from this for a year or two, but I'm not at all surprised to hear that there's hopefully a bit of a bounce in the pricing for renewables, because I think got to a point where it was unsustainably low, and I found some people in the market willing to bid in the single digits dollar per megawatt hour for PPAs. And glad to hear that number is now coming back up. So I think what held it to that low, unsustainable level was, in many instances, the old PTC values, which, as you know, have now been starting to ramp down. And I think now that we are on this glide path to eventually see the PTC go away, I think what you're seeing is pricing returning more to kind of the natural market level, which will still be extremely competitive for ratepayers and utilities and consumers all around the country. So, what is the right sustainable level in the wind-rich regions? It's probably not in the teens dollar per megawatt hour, which you've seen in recent years, but it's probably not a lot higher than mid-20s, let's say. So we'll see where that gets to. Obviously, that number is a little bit higher as you get into Northeast markets or California markets, for example. But I think most of what you've seen in pricing recently has to do with getting back to the more natural level for that technology.
Got it. So, a lot of people, talk a lot about solar and storage and wind, and these are topics I think that there's, a lot of people have a view on. But given your background, especially given the work that you've been doing more recently as an investor in energy transition, what other area of energy transition are you really excited about beyond just what we're going to see in the next 5 years and 10 years? But what do you think is interesting over the next 20, 30-year horizon? What gets you really excited that you think, this is going to be a real paradigm changer and going to really have a long-term impact on energy transition?
So I'll say one that I was surprised to not be more excited about, and then two that do get me pretty jazzed. So I went out looking for opportunities more in the distributed end of the market, either in energy efficiency projects or in distributed solar and a few other areas. And what we tended to find was, though the project level returns can be really interesting, it's very expensive to scale a platform of little projects, whether they're little lighting and HVAC projects in the energy efficiency world, or little solar plants. There's just a fair amount of corporate burn or SG&A that gets in the way, and so the path to profitability, we were a little bit surprised to see is tougher in some of those areas. And I'm sure a lot of your viewers will argue the other side of that, and they may be right. The areas where I do get very excited, though, and this would probably fit more in the distributed end of the market, is in EV charging. Pretty bullish on the amount of opportunity that we're going to see in EV infrastructure writ large, and there are a number of different ways to sort of get after that opportunity. And another one that really gets me excited is green hydrogen.
Green hydrogen, okay.
Where I see the most amount of opportunity in the green hydrogen side is on these hard to abate sectors, as they're often referred to, that cannot really clean and green themselves up with an electron. They need a molecule. And so whether you are a fertilizer company or something else in petrochem, or a long-haul trucking company, maybe maritime, maybe aviation, a lot of those businesses will struggle if the only way for them to become more environmentally sustainable is with renewable energy. A great solution from them is to run more of their operations off of green hydrogen. So that's what I'm spending a lot of time on.
How do you see the cost curve come down for green hydrogen? Because today hydrogen is expensive, even gray and brown hydrogen, but green is very pricey. How do you see the cost curve come down, and how long do you think it's going to take before that becomes a viable alternative to other decarbonization strategies?
So it's always about the cost curve, as you well know, whether it's the 7FA gas turbine, whether it's a wind turbine, a solar panel, a lithium-ion battery, or now we're talking about hydrogen, right? And I think many fortunes have probably been made and lost on people betting the cost curve timing and getting it right or wrong. So Do I have a crystal ball? No, but I think you can educate yourself and you can build a business that is resilient to maybe the timing being a little off, or having projects in the right place when the timing, does sort of really work. So what I'll say broadly is, by the middle of this decade, I think there are going to be no shortage of opportunities to build a green hydrogen facility that makes a very nice return, and that can potentially displace an increasing amount of the gray hydrogen that's out there today.
Okay, that's very interesting. So the one question that I ask all participants on these shows is some advice to yourself at the age of 22, 23, just out of college, 1 year into your professional career. So if you look back at all the things you've learned, all the things you've done, if you were to give advice to yourself starting out a career in energy and renewables, what advice would you give to yourself?
Man, I got a lot. First thing I would say is, you are not as smart as you think. Second thing is, don't just be a workhorse. So everyone works hard, and you can't outwork everybody else on the path to success. You've got to do something that is differentiated, and that involves some new idea or something that's unique. Another thing that's really served me well, Patrick, is I really invest a lot of time in relationships and in building a network that I go back to all the time. And I think the way that or what's been useful to me is to not only ask people for help, but to offer help, and try to support other people. And it's all about karma. It ends up coming back in your direction at the end of the day. So work smart, invest in people, and you're not as smart as you might think.
Those are very sage words, Jake. Well, look, Thank you so much for your time. It's great having you on the show.
Great to be here, Patrick. Thank you. Talk to you soon.